I've had my fair share of failed launches, and I'm going to talk about what you should do when your launch flops in this video. Before you actually launch, there's a few things you want to put into place. I'm going to overview that first before we even talk about what to do if you launch and it flops. The first thing you want to do is have a launch strategy and a plan in place. You want to have a realistic yet still ambitious strategy. I used to have really lofty, ambitious launch goals, and it just wasn't achievable with my audience size, with what I had going on. You want to be ambitious, but still realistic about it. And actually, it might be good to have 3 different targets. So if you have a financial goal for this launch, maybe it's a minimum you want to hit, then a better, and then a best. I before would always just have a best goal. Really in the back of my mind, I would be like, oh, if I made like 10,000 for this launch, that would be great. But I'm aiming for like, as an example, 20,000. And then I hit 10, but I feel kind of shitty about it because it feels like I didn't actually achieve it. So anyways, all this to say, I do advise you to have a minimum, better, and then best goal so that you are realistic and also ambitious about it. From there, you want to break down how you're actually going to achieve your goal. So then you want to figure out how much traffic you need, how much nurturing or how much warming up you need to do, what your conversion rate needs to be. And you need to have all these metrics laid out in advance so that when you do launch, you typically will launch over a week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month, so that you don't have to wait until the very last day to figure out whether or not you're going to hit your launch goal. Because if you know exactly how much traffic you need, exactly how much you need to nurture your audience, exactly what your conversion rate should be, you can monitor this throughout your launch. And then if things are off target, you can then go in like R2D2 and fix it. But if you have no idea what you're aiming for, that makes it really hard to pivot. That's why I wanted to talk about the strategy first. So set those realistic yet ambitious targets, do the minimum, better, best, and then set up your sales funnel targets as well. If this is going a little bit over your head and you want it broken down even more, check out my new private podcast. It's called Sustain Your Success. And in that private podcast, I really break down and go way more in depth in sustainable scaling and sales strategies that I have adopted in this 2.0 version of my business. You can click the link down below or visit selinaho.com/SYS. But high level, you do need a launch plan. You need the targets so that you can assess whether or not you're on or off target. The next thing you need are launch pivots. And I always say you want to have the launch pivots in your launch strategy and your launch plan beforehand so that you can plan these pivots when you're in a calm and very intentional state of mind. Because my first few launches, I didn't have pivots or backup plans in advance. And then when my launch went awry and I wasn't on target, I was freaking out and I was spiraling so hard in that mental space and feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed out, and feeling negative in general. It is so hard to think strategically. So it's really in your best interest to think about your launch pivots beforehand. For every single target you have, you want to come up with some pivots, aka backup plans, as to what you will do if it doesn't work out. Other pro tip as well is not just to think of backup plans generally, but you want to think of short to medium term backup plans because you don't want to be in the middle of your launch, have a week left, and then be like, oh, I should pitch podcasts as a backup plan because pitching podcasts is going to take weeks. And by the time you're interviewed on those podcasts and by the time the interviews come out, your launch will be over. So you want to be strategic and think of short-term strategies. More specifically, you want to think of traffic strategies, ways you can drum up more traffic. You want to also think of nurturing strategies as well as conversion strategies as well. Because don't forget, you're going to have targets for every single one of those parts of your sales funnel. And if things aren't going well, then you need to have launch pivots, aka backup plans you can easily implement. I go through some ideas in my private podcast, which is again, Sustain Your Success. You can check it out using the link down below or at selinaho.com/SYS. But I highly recommend you come up with some pivot ideas right now when you're in a sound and reflective state of mind versus when you're spiraling in the middle of your launch. Finally, once your launch is over, I always do a launch postmortem and I make my clients do this as well because you want to recap the launch to see how it went so that you can capture all the data, capture all the learnings, the lessons, so that next launch you don't have to start from scratch. You can also leverage all the materials you've used. So all the copy you've written for the emails, all the social media graphics, you can just change them up a little bit, shush them up, and then go from there. Highly recommend you do a launch postmortem as well. This is what you should do to prevent your launch from flopping. It is so important to be strategic and intentional from the get-go, have those pivots and backup plans ready. And if you are super committed to sustainably growing and scaling your business, I would love to have you listen to my private podcast, which is called Sustain Your Success. I think it'd be super helpful for you because I go really deep on the sustainable scaling strategies that I have developed in order to grow this 2.0 version of my business. So again, you can check it out using the link down below or at selenaho.com/SYS. I'm excited for you to implement what I covered in this video, and as always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below.